I grew up in a very rural corner of New York State. It's very quiet there. There's no real cities. It's very dark at night. And I have a brother. This story takes place when I was 17 and he was 16. I was a senior in high school at that time. I was very studious. And I had a research paper due one night in December. So I sat on my bed with all of my references in a peacock fashion around me because, we didn't have the internet yet. And I was working very hard to write this paper. Now, to tell you a little bit about my family, it was rather traditional. My dad worked, my mom stayed home and took care of us, and she did the laundry and the cleaning and the cooking, mostly the cooking. And we had this tiny little kitchen that always smelled so good of the things that she would create. It's sort of a combination of vegetable soup and interesting spices with a little bit of maybe herbal tea around the edges. And Dad at that time had gotten a job working at night. So he was gone basically from supper time until midnight 30, and it left the rest of us at home. Now in December, New York State used to get rather a lot of snow, like above my knees. And we had this snow when a warmer rain had come in and frozen on. So we had about an inch of ice on top of everything else. Now, my brother, he was maybe about as studious as I was, or maybe a little more relaxed, but he was 16 at the time and had grown kind of big and strong. And I was busy working on this paper when all of a sudden, my mom came in and said, "Come on, we gotta go." I said, "Go? What do you mean?" She said, "We're gonna go sledding." I said, "We're gonna what?" "No, I have to work on this paper." So she said, no, you must come out. So I said, okay. So we went out into the other room and we put on our various clothes as you do when you're going out in the very cold, and the extra socks and the snow pants and the shirt and the sweater and the jacket and the hat and the mittens and the long scarf that's wrapped around 3 times. And out we went. Now, the snow was very deep and the ice on top of it was thick, so it didn't break at all. We could walk right on top of it. And the sky was as black as you can imagine, with a million stars where you can still see the Milky Way going across the sky. And there was the full moon sparkling on all that ice and Orion standing over us. So the way the land was laid out is we had an acre garden that was more or less flat, but it sloped down gently from the beginning towards the field. And from the field, there was a slow undulation downhill until across the 10 acres, we got to the forest. And all of this was sparkling white like magic. So we had an old-fashioned runner sled, the kind that has 2 skis, as it were, and a bar that you could press left or right to steer. And my mom said, "Okay, here's what you do. Lie down on the sled and hold on to the steering handles and put your boots up in the air, bend your knees, and someone will push." And I said, "Okay." So she went first and my brother pushed her, and it was crunch, 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 and then all of a sudden she was gone. Well, after a while, she came back, and then it was my turn. She said, "Okay, it works, it's great, lie down." So I took a hold of the steering, put my boots in the air, my brother started to run, and then all of a sudden, he didn't have my boots anymore, and I was gliding along as if by magic across the ice. It went shh, all the way across the garden, all the way down the hill, and all the way to the forest. Now, what you need to know is that I was not allowed to venture this far from home alone. This was forbidden territory at this point, so far from home, and it was wonderful. It was completely silent, and the stars were sparkling down. And then I got the string of the sled and crunch, 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 all the way back up the hill until it was my brother's turn. And then I pushed him and he went sailing forth. And we did this up and down the field for probably the next hour and a half, quite late into the night. And finally Mom said, "We should probably go back in the house now." So we gathered up the sled and took it back and hung it on the hook in the barn. We went in the house and took off all of our various and sundry clothing and hung them all up to dry. And just from there, do you know, I could smell hot chocolate. We went into the cozy tiny kitchen, and it turns out Mom had put on a pan of whole milk with real chocolate set low to simmer so that it became the most wonderful hot chocolate while we were out sledding. And we got to sit around the table and drink our hot chocolate, talk about what fun we had had that night, and then, you know, scamper off to bed. And I gathered all my items from my paper. And do you know, I have no idea what that paper was on. I got a good grade because I did get good grades, but what I didn't know was that night, instead of writing a paper for a grade, I was writing a permanent memory of my family and sledding and the ice and the snow and the sparkle. It was magic.